Bill, welcome to another episode where we highlight the mayhem and hijinks of days gone by in police and security work. This week we have another new sponsor, Whitey Stump Grinder Freeman's Mobile Mulch and Exorcism. That's right, use the promo code HeyBill, get a free bag of red, blue, or green mulch, or you can have one haint exercise from the home, get another haint exercised half price. As you have figured out by now, my sponsors are quite fictitious and hopefully humorous, but I would like to give a shout out to a legitimate company, my buddy Steve Phillips and his daughter Steph at phillipsoutdoorscents.com, and that's scent as in deer, predator. I even tried to get him to do scent of a woman, but he said, Bill, scent only works if you have good bait. If you are a outdoors person into hunting and fishing, if you have to get rid of problem animals such as beavers or coyote, they've got a wide variety of cover scents for hunters and trappers. They've got whitetail, beaver, coyote scents. They have minerals and attractants, lures and bait, fishing spray-on lures. They even have apparel. Contact Steve or Steph, and I will put a link in the comments below. When you contact them, make sure to use the code 268. 268. That was my buddy Steve's radio number when he was my supervisor. That lets them know that you heard it here on the Hey Bill show. And Steve said that he'll make sure to show you some love on your order. Give phillipsoutdoorscents.com a check. This episode is going to be involving a former supervisor of mine. His name was Marvin Terrell. We simply referred to him as the Merv. He was my supervisor back in the bus and choo-choo days. I always joked to people back then, I had three fathers. I had my heavenly father, my biological father, and I had the Merv. As I was preparing to do the episode on Merv, which was originally going to be the second episode of Hey Bill, I was going to reach out to him to get some stories from him and to catch up. I found out that unfortunately Merv had passed away in October of 2022. That upset me greatly, and so I had to postpone this episode until I felt as though I could tell some good stories that would do Merv justice. Merv was an Air Force veteran from Vietnam. He had also worked as a county police officer in the metro area. He was actually a detective for the missing and murdered children of the late 70s. I say that because Merv been there, done that, and he was truly like one of our dads to me and a couple other officers. This was a double-edged sword, of course. Merv, he stuck up for me more times with a precinct commander than I care to remember, covering up for my bonehead mistakes. My favorite one was a month or two before the great amateur games of 1996. The Bus and Choo-Choo Authority was opening up a brand new North Line, and they had to have officers that manned that, even as they were going back and forth with no passengers on it. And so I had worked all of my off days, weeks before the games, and one day after about 28 or 29 straight days of working, I lived quite a bit of ways from the precinct in the northern part of Great Peach State, and I came in to work one evening extremely exhausted, and of course got there in time for all of us to smoke and joke before roll call. And as we were all standing around, the Merv looks at me, Mr. Camp, are we expecting a firefight today? And all of us looked at each other puzzled and looked back, and I said, Merv, what are you talking about? And he's got this devilish grin on his face, that cool 100 cigarette firmly attached to the corner of his mouth. He said, Mr. Camp, aren't we feeling a bit light today? And I'm still looking confused. We're all looking confused. And when we would all be standing around, I had a habit of resting my right forearm on Roscoe. And I was in the process of resting my arm on Roscoe, and then my arm went completely straight, and to my horror I realized I did not have my department-issued sidearm with me in my holster. Merv immediately recognized that look of horror, and he said, "Mr. Camp, go back to the car, get Roscoe, get ready for work." And I looked at him and said, "It's not that easy, Merv. Roscoe is about 35 or 40 minutes northwest of us." Then suddenly it was no longer a laughing matter for the Merv. "Come on, Mr. Camp. Gotta go see the captain." So we walk into the precinct, and from episode 4, this was still the same precinct. We hadn't officially opened the new one yet. So I'm sitting in the little sergeant's office. I've already taken off my gun belt, and I've already taken off my badge and my nameplate and everything, and get ready to accept my fate. And hopefully it was just a couple of days in the street without pay. And from the captain's office, Captain Timmy, we'll call him, he had a high-pitched voice, and you could hear mumblings, but you couldn't make out words. So it went something like, to which Merv would answer, and I'm thinking to myself, oh God, here it comes. And every time the Merv would answer the captain, the one word I could distinctly make out was when the captain would say, "Damn. Damn." And I'm just sitting out there sweating bullets. And finally, Captain Timmy comes out, and he looks at me, and the Merv is behind him giving me this stare that was a disapproving fatherly stare that cut right through me. And I'm standing there with my gun belt in hand and badge and keys to the precinct ready to hand it over. Captain Timmy said, "Camp, first of all, dumbass, don't ever do that again." "Yes, sir." "Be thankful Sergeant Terrell explained how you've been working your ass off for 28 days in a row." He said, "Here's what we're going to do. We're going to take one of the day shift sergeants' firearms and give it to you. Camp, I don't care what happens. I don't care the circumstances. Choke somebody out, snap their neck, beat hell out of them with your baton. But whatever you do not shoot somebody with this weapon that you're going to carry tonight." "Yes, sir." So after being issued a replacement Roscoe, the Merv and I stepped outside. Merv had the John Wayne discipline approach. He would talk low, he would talk slow, and he wouldn't say much. But oh boy, what he did say. And after that little conversation, I looked at him and I said, "Merv, you should be proud of me." "Mr. Camp, why in the world would I be proud of you at this moment? You should be proud that I kept my mouth shut when he said, 'Whatever you do, don't shoot anybody,' because my first instinct was to say, 'You mean like the real police would, Captain?'" The Merv and I immediately burst into laughter, and it was all good between us. Now, when the bus and choo-choo police decided to hire the Merv, honesty compels me to say they did not hire him for his warm and fuzzy, touchy-feeling personality. As an example, one time, Merv and I were walking across a parking lot. We were low on cigarettes, so we were going to go buy them, and as we were walking across the parking lot, here's a nice young man. He's got a cardboard box sitting next to him, and as always, the ever-present Cool 100 tucked firmly in the corner of Merv's mouth. As we passed the young man, he said, "Pardon me, gentlemen, what brand cigarette do you smoke?" To which Merv replied without even looking at him, "Not your brand, pal," and just kept going. I stopped, mouth open, looking like a tree full of young owls, and I turned to the guy and I said, "Look, man," I said, "I smoke Marlboro Light 100s. I've got about 4 of them left here in the pack, and I was going to go buy some more. Here you go. If it's okay, you can have this pack, or what's left of this pack." The young man looked at me, still cutting his eyes at Merv. He said, "No," he said, "actually, I don't smoke. I'm here for a promotion. Anybody telling me their brand of cigarettes, I was going to tell them about our company and give them a free pack. But in your case, as nice as you are, offering me what you had left over," he said, "I'm going to give you an entire carton of cigarettes for free." So I run and catch up with Merv, and he looks at me and he's, Mr. Camp, when are you going to learn to stop dealing with these deadbeats? I said, I don't know, Merv. Sometimes it has its benefits. I take that new carton of cigarettes. I held him up. Mr. Camp, where did you get that carton of cigarettes? I said, yeah, the nice young man back there gave it to me as part of a promo. God darn, you gotta be kidding me. No, I'm not kidding, Merv. He stops and he's turning around looking to see if the young man was still there. And I said, Merv, I'm pretty sure he doesn't have your brand of cigarettes in that box, pal. Now, Bill Lucky, as you recall, the originator of Bill, he and the Merv were real close. They were in that county police department together for years. During the 96 amateur games, they knew better than to put Merv as our supervisor because New York Bill Lucky, myself, and the Merv, there would have been an international incident every afternoon when the Merv would come down and pick up the box lunches that were donated to the law enforcement working during these games. Merv was like the kid who lived next door to a birthday party that he couldn't attend. He would hear Bill Lucky and I tell him all the funny stories that had happened the previous day, and he was like that kid looking over the fence wishing he could join in on the fun, but he can't because he didn't finish his homework or something. So I felt kind of bad for Merv. He had a good group of people working for him. He bragged about him. He said, Bill, just not quite as entertaining as y'all, which makes for a long 12-hour shift. So the next day, I had a mission. One of the people that worked for Merv, his name was Roger, but we called him Rock. God love him. He had adult ADD. Sometimes when he should question things, he didn't. He just simply did as he was told, and he did it with great enthusiasm. I used this to give Merv some entertainment during the 3 weeks that we were working these 12-hour shifts, and so I came up with a list of calls that were completely bogus and fictitious for Merv to give to Rock. Now, on our department-issued radios, we had a main channel that when you broadcast, if you were not in a dead zone, everybody on that channel could hear. Then we had channel 2, which could only be heard by the people in the immediate vicinity of the station you were at. A talk-around channel. At this new precinct, there was a 3-level parking deck, and to accommodate the extra parking across the street from the station, there was an open field that was quartered off into a parking lot. And tucked over in the back corner was a nice spot with no lights on it, lots of trees to where you could not see the train and choo-choo patrol car that Merv would sit in and do his crossword puzzles and drink his coffee with no cream and 2 sugars. But yet, from that position, he could see everything going on in the station and the parking deck. He would call Rock up when he got bored and would give him these bogus calls that I gave him. Rock on 2, be advised. Visually impaired man in the overflow lot has lost his car keys. Look for the man with the dog. The rest of us would immediately think to ourselves, why does a blind man have car keys? But not Rock. God love him. He was there to protect and serve. And so Merv would sit there and wait until he got on the top deck of the parking garage, and he would watch him. He would watch Roger walking he'd let him get from the top deck to the middle deck, down to the bottom deck, all the way to the exit of the station, before he'd say, Rock on 2, disregard that last call. He found his car keys. Merv ran poor Rock ragged for 3 weeks. And at that time, for 3 weeks, all of us in that precinct, we didn't see each other unless we worked with each other. After the 3-week assignment of the amateur games, we saw Rock and we all complimented him about how great he looked. You know, lost about 35 pounds. Knowing good and well that I was the cause of that sudden weight loss, I said, gee, it sounds like you had lots of walking in there. And the Merv every evening would come down and tell us what all he did, calls that he gave Rock to run him ragged, and Bill Lucky and I and Merv would just laugh. But there was one in particular call that not only affected Rock, but actually had every officer at that station, along with local county police departments, searching feverishly for a diabolical individual who committed the heinous crime of taking 5 shower curtain rings, connecting them to resemble the logo of the Great Amateur Games, which was celebrating its 100 years, and he had spray painted them gold and was selling them to unsuspecting, enthusiastic patrons that were heading to individual events. This perpetrator was able to blend into the shadows and disappear better than the Batman. This man was able to escape capture to the point that D.B. Cooper would be absolutely envious of his ability to disappear. Every night, at least 3 or 4 times, the Merv would put out the faithful call that the shower curtain ring salesman was back. And after about 3 or 4 days of putting this out, as the Merv was there to pick up all the officers' lunches, he was absolutely crying, telling us how it had gone from just Rocky to everybody. The federal bureaucracy of incompetence would be proud of the search grid that the officers under my command would spread out in the parking deck, starting from the ground and going up, covering the stairwells, covering up in a perfect grid formation. Bill Lucky and I just crying, as Merv would explain that even the local county police officers who had been speaking with our officers would suddenly get involved. There were reports of this man, the parking decks, the overflow lot. He was everywhere and nowhere, all at the same time, up to and including many months after the games were over. If I was in a particularly bored mood, because nothing funny had happened in a few weeks, I would come to the precinct, open up the door, and proclaim that there was some people out here with gold spray-painted shower curtain rings that they claimed that they had just bought from a guy. And they would blow past me, pushing me out of the way, setting up their perimeter search, looking for the people, along with the perpetrator, all of which never existed. And needless to say, some found it absolutely brilliant and humorous. Others, time had not healed those wounds, I'm afraid, about the whole thing being made up. And there you have it, my stories about the Merv. We miss you, we'll love you. Rest in peace, my friend. Till next time, I'm going to be Code 8. Thank you for tuning in.